But anyway, no, again, welcome everyone. We're happy you're here. Appreciate it. October, SeaPUG. It's our lovely logo showing up again. I see Gaston has his t-shirt on once again. Of course, I timed things terribly and mine's in the wash, but I will try to do it next time. Yeah, just quick. So just run through some intros for us again, especially for the new folks, announcements. We'll be able to introduce Ruth and then panel. That shouldn't be there. Let's get rid of that one. Yeah, then we'll go on speaker. Cool. So yeah, especially for the new folks, just a recap of kind of who, what, why, etc. So collection of Power BI folks in the Seattle area with a West Side focus. So again, looking to bring you the brightest and best in Power BI. We've got a kind of fantastic who's who list of folks in the Power BI world. And for those that were not able to join any of the meetings prior, feel free to take a look at the meetup group for some of the back catalog of the greatest hits. There's a lot of stuff back there if you want to have a look. But yeah, we're specifically on the west side of the Seattle area. There's another group on the east side, so there's kind of some other options for the local folks. And then just our quick why. Just want to encourage sharing of knowledge, opportunities, growth, etc. We love having everyone around here. Oh, hey, Stefan, thanks for the gift, appreciate it. But yeah, just want to have fun with it and just introduce everyone to some of the speakers that we've had and some great things going on in the community. Yeah, so just kind of a few recap here of kind of some of our kind of tenets here is feel free to come on camera. We love to see everyone on camera. It's tough, especially for speakers, to not see reactions to things. I love seeing other people's faces in meetings, so it's always helpful. Hey Neil, how's it going? Be friendly, welcoming, open to questions. There's no bad questions, especially in a user group like this. We have all folks from just starting at Power BI all the way through to advanced folks like Ruth, and some of the folks like Gaston here as well, who are Microsoft MVPs and kind of know a heck of a lot about a lot of different things, all the way down to like I said, people that are just kind of starting out. So feel free to throw any questions out there, especially on a topic like this, where it's kind of about the data storytelling and things too. Yeah. Next slide here. So yeah, like I said, feel free to look at the recordings that we have up on YouTube and linked to from the meetup group as well. Wes, you want to drop these links into chat as well if you have them, or I could do that actually. That might be a bit easier because I've got it up on screen. So feel free to take a look at these. We've got kind of a discussion board and YouTube page there if anyone wants to take a look. Like I said before, very approachable community. Feel free to throw some questions out there. It's a lot more personable than Stack Overflow or the Power BI community board sometimes. So we're happy to jump in and answer any questions you have. But again, have a quick look through old recordings and anything you want to have a look at. So what is your forte? We love to kind of ask in the community. We've had some fantastic sessions in the past from folks who have been involved with the community, presenting and sharing some things that they're passionate about. Obviously we've got Ruth here today sharing some things she's passionate about. We'd love to have some new speakers if there's anything particularly interesting that you've solved a problem in Power BI or otherwise. We'd love to hear about it. Or even, if there's a topic or something that, you've heard about coming, maybe some of the things out of Ignite this year that were some new features coming to Power BI that you're interested in learning more about, feel free to throw that in the chat or, discussion on the meetup group as well. And then that way we can kind of look about how we can get that in the pipeline for some of the next sessions we have. And then lastly, feel free to volunteer. We always want to introduce new people to the group and kind of bring some more people to the fore and kind of change things up a bit and freshen things up sometimes as well. So yeah, like I said, just feel free to jump in and make suggestions and just be part of the group. So without further ado, welcoming Ruth of Curbal fame. If you're not familiar with Ruth, which I'm sure most people are absolutely familiar with Ruth, I know I've looked through a bunch of her videos in the past. They've been super useful, especially on some of the DAX things and some tips and tricks in there. She's going to be walking through how to effectively tell a story with your data and Power BI. She also has a Twitter, which I was looking at the other day, so that's helpful for kind of some reminders there of when new videos get posted if you don't want to necessarily subscribe to YouTube, but I would recommend that. Definitely subscribe, hit the subscribe button. But yeah, without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Ruth. I will stop sharing and then you can jump in, introduce yourself. And there actually was one other thing. Russ, who was going to introduce you, was going to say how much he absolutely loves your visualization of performance analyzer data, and he showed it to a bunch of his clients who also love it, and it's one of his favorite things. So from him, thank you for that.
Oh, cool. Thank you back. Cool. Let me share. Oh, I almost clicked the leave button. Why is it close to the share button anyway? Okay, let me move you. So there, where am I? There. So very, very shortly about me, Ruth Pozuelo, and I run a consulting business myself in Sweden, deliver solutions to all types of businesses, and I am a Power BI MVP in 6 years, I think, 6 years. So we're going to talk about today one of my favorite topics, which is data visualization, data storytelling, like presenting the data. And I have a YouTube channel, so you're very welcome. I have actually 2 YouTube channels. I always fail to present my second YouTube channel. That is more about the data visualization side of things. This is more about the Power BI side of things. So if you prefer data visualization, the other one is called Curbal Data Labs. So you can join me there also. So to today's presentation, we're going to talk about data visualization, not so much specifically just about Power BI, but in general, but these are things that you can take with you when you're doing Power BI reporting or dashboards. So how many of you have one of these babies? I guess quite many, because they're quite popular nowadays, right? Everybody has like a fitness trackers of some sorts. It doesn't have to be a Garmin. It could be like Fitbit or the Apple Watch, or like a million devices. And I find that very cool for 2 things. Obviously, they're useful when you're doing a sport, so that you can track your whatever you're doing, you're running or whatever. But the second thing, which is probably my favorite one, is all the data it pulls out. It's like tons and tons of data for you to do all kinds of analysis, and it's quite fun to do. So if you don't have this type of watches, Garmin, for example, this is the type of dashboards that it presents to you once you've done an activity. This is for running, and it dumps all types of data in there. That comes from the view from the phone. Obviously, there's one on the web too. And even though it provides a lot of information, there are things that could be a little bit better, and we're going to try to improve a little bit how this looks and see if we could do some things, small things that probably will help us tell a better story when it comes to data. So I am not the only one that thinks that this data is not very useful. If you go on the internet and search, you will find that a lot of people are asking, what do I do with my Garmin data? Like, okay, I have CSVs with CSVs of data everywhere, but what do I do with it? What do you guys do with it? And a lot of people say that it's actually quite cool to see where you run on the satellite image, which I agree. I think it's actually quite fun. But I don't think Garmin is collecting all that data just so you can see your run or your swim on a map, even though it's cool. So what we're going to do, as I said before, is we're going to try to improve the dashboard. And to improve it, the first thing I always think about when, especially after I've done a report, so I look at it and I always ask myself and my data, let me move you. So what? So now I have created this beautiful masterpiece. So what? Is this informative in any way? Is this helping the user understand something, do something, right? So we're doing it for having the user to learn something, take some actions. Is it actually doing it? You have to always be a little bit critical about the work you produce and see, is it working? So we're going to put the so what test into practice and see how it would work. So this is a day that I went out for running, and you can see that the distance is there is 5 kilometers. So I went running 5 kilometers. So what? Was it a long run? Was it a short run? I know, because obviously I know how often I run, but do you know, you have no way to know with what they are providing here if this was a long or a short run. It was 37 minutes to ride 5 kilometers. Is that a good one for me, or is it bad? Was it slow? You have no way to know, right? It's not telling you. And we could go on and on with all the metrics that they are providing, but it's always missing something that allow us to tell the story about today's run, or that specific day's run. Which brings me to a second tip, which is always provide context to your data. Always, always, always. Never put numbers alone in isolation. Always give context. So we're going to apply some context. Let's see what that means. So for the 532 kilometers, if I would tell you, or if Garmin would tell us that in average, we normally run 5 kilometers, or I normally run 5 kilometers, you would say, I didn't run more than normal, right? So we're starting to tell the story. I ran as far as I normally run. Cool. The average time, if Garmin would tell us that, would say, okay, I run normally 20 minutes. This time I run 37 for the same distance. So I don't think I had a very good day, right? And you can actually tell the story just by adding those numbers in there. You don't need to ask me, did you have a good run? You can see it. And if I would tell you, okay, Garmin would tell us that normally I run like flat, by sea level, but this time I was running at 200 meters, then you would say, okay, so maybe it was not a bad run. It's just that I was running in an altitude, so, you ran slower. So suddenly by applying some context to the data, we're able to start telling a story, where before it was just numbers. So I think it's always good. Once you put these KPIs and you put numbers, give context. So it is $3,000 in sales. So how is that good? Is that bad? How was it last month? How was it last year? How was it last quarter? Give reference, give context to what you're saying, so people can actually understand if that was good or bad. Okay, another tip. Something that is always very useful also is to show trends. So we're going to do some tests. Let's say that I tell you that this is actually true data from my website. My server connection was 0.4 seconds. Should I call my web host? Yes or no? And then you might tell me, well, I know nothing about websites. I know nothing about site speeds. I don't know if you should call them. But what about if I show you this chart, especially that part? You can see that my server connection was 0.1.5, something like that, but and then suddenly jumped to 0.4, 0.5. So something happened that made my server connection slower. So I did call my web host, and they did have a problem and they solved it. Okay, so by showing the number in isolation, we could have not tell that story. But by showing the trend, you can actually, even if you don't know what a server connection should be, you can see that it went up or down, and then you can figure out if you should do something about it. Another test. Page load time for my website, it was 40 seconds one time. So obviously when I saw that, you were like, oh my God, imagine 40 seconds to load a page is not good. It's not good. So you might say, hey, you should probably run your web host. But if I show you these, and especially if I put that in there, it was one time. I actually went into the website, digged into the data. In just that particular day, there was a lot of visitors from countries that do not have good internet speeds. And if that is a country that you're targeting, obviously you should fix it. But if not, then you should just let it be. It was just a one-time thing. It didn't happen again. The website page went to 5 seconds again. So I was good. So I didn't need to call them. And again, if you just see the number in isolation, you might get the wrong conclusion to if you should do something about it or not. Next one. So the next tip is to select the right visuals. and that is whenever you can. And whenever you can, it means that there are things that are going to limit the type of visuals that you can use. One is, for example, the audience. So if you have a very specialized audience like data scientists or data visualization experts or things like that, then you can go a little bit wild with what you produce. But if you're producing data for the general public, for example, then you should tone it down a little bit because a lot of people will not be able to read your charts. Another thing that will also limit what you can do when choosing visuals is what technology you're using. Are you able to create the chart that you want to do or not? So you will find yourself with a lot of constraints as to what visuals you can use. But still, in the palette that you have, there's always a visual that is better than another. And then with some little formatting tricks and things, you can do something that stand out to be very good or be very, very bad. Let's do some examples. So this you've seen probably 1,000 times, but it's a good example anyway. So which supplier has the biggest market share? And you're probably looking at it and say A or B, but you don't know, right? You cannot really tell from here if it is A or B, unless they put legends or like data labels on it, and then it becomes more clear. So the pie chart, especially a 3D one, is not like a good choice, but if you have to, make sure you sort them and you put data labels, because that will make the difference between being able to read what is in there or having to guess and have no idea. Let's do another example. This is actually a pretty chart, properly formatted, looking nice, but wouldn't it be a lot nicer if we would just apply some color? Now suddenly the data is jumping at you. You can see exactly the points where your cost per mile is over the average. You can see it here too, but it requires a little bit more brain power, that's all. This is like, it just jumps at you and tells you, hey, I'm here, I'm the one that I'm over, right? So it's a lot easier to understand. Another one. So how much are we growing this year versus the previous one? And there's nothing wrong with this chart. It's 2-line charts and they have current year and previous year in the light blue. But it takes, again, a lot of brain power to actually do the math. And you don't even know that you can do the math because you know the label. But if I put it like this, if the same information, but just spell it out. If this is the question that we want to do, this is probably the chart that you want to give, because it will tell you, you don't have to do the math. And it's very clear which periods were actually performing. And you have actually the number in there. Okay, so depending on which question you want to ask, you should choose your charts carefully. Let's do another one. This is, I always find this type of charts very tough to read. It is possible to read them. It takes time only. So our business is the one with the diamond here, the blue, and then you have like different indexes like selection, convenience, service, and then you're comparing against competitors. At some point of reading this, you will get it. But how about that one? I mean, it jumps at you again. It's just like, the blue is us, the other ones are the other people. I mean, if you can highlight one competitor if you want to, but it just tells that story in a much clearer way and it's easier to read. Again, there's nothing wrong with this, but it's a lot harder to read. And people does not like hard, right? They like easy things. The last one, lowest scores. And this is not difficult, but something that I noticed that when people have difficulties remembering numbers, not everybody obviously, but in general. So if you actually would do it like that, images are easier to remember. So you will actually see, okay, this is the order, you see how many stars that I filled, and it just tells the story a little bit better, a little bit faster, less brain processing, if you say so. Okay. Tip 5. Think like a luxury real estate agent. And with that, what I mean is that a dashboard, in my opinion, it should be appealing. So it should be beautiful. When you go in there, it's like, wow, this is cool. Like, you need to impress your audience. They have a lot of things to do. They have a lot of things that are drawing their attention. If you want them to look at your dashboard, you need to show. You need to make sure that it's brilliant. It has to be spacious. We tend to put everything on one page, and then you don't know where to start and where to end. And then plan everything in detail. Why am I putting this there? Is it adding to the story, yes or no? If it's not, get rid of it and put it in another page, tell another story. So for example, this is not very good. It has a lot of information. Again, you can go tile by tile, think about it, and eventually you'll get it. But most people will see this and go and do something else because it takes too much brain power. So think about it. You've gone through importing the data. You've cleaned it in Power Query, which takes time. You've done the modeling. You've done all the DAX. You spend hours and hours and hours, and then suddenly you go and you do this, and nobody looks at it. Isn't that a shame? You do want people to look at your data and the information and take action. So the last 20% of your dashboard, it really matters, and it takes time. It does take time. It takes probably the same time as doing the other things combined. So going to give you some examples of before and after. Here is one before, and here is some coloring, some formatting, some cool pictures, just to tell the story a little bit better. Before, some simple formatting. I'm not doing a lot of stuff, just moving things around, putting some colors, putting some banners, some buttons. This is a KPI board. Put things in order, put legends, put arrows, put colors that guide people to how they should read this thing. Here's another one. Just, it doesn't take a lot of time to do, but well, it takes a lot of time to do, and it is hard, but it's worth it. And if you're a little bit unsure on how to do this, make sure that you get help from your marketing teams, because they normally have people that, is good with designs, good with colors, and they will be able to make your presentation pretty, or reports or whatever it is, and present it in a way that people can actually read them, right? So be creative, like our doggy here. But don't go overboard. These and these, they are cool. The people you will probably get a lot of likes on social media, but nobody will understand it. If the purpose of you doing data visualization is for people to understand it, these only will go with the right audience and people that actually have time and have a very deep interest in the topic, that will actually sit down and see what those points are. Okay. For business settings, those type of visualizations usually don't work very well. So to summarize, those are my tips. So if you remember, so what? Make sure that you ask so what to your finished report to see if it makes sense. Add the context to your data. Show trends whenever you can. Pick the right visuals. Despite all the constraints that you're going to find, there are always good visuals, and with good formatting, you will be able to do a lot of things. Real estate agent, make sure that it's spacious, that it's pretty, that you plan things. If there is a plan there, it's there for a reason, not because you had one, it's because there it makes sense to have it. And then be creative. I mean, we should be able to do things a little bit outside the box to impress our audience, but without going overboard and going too far and doing something that is too complex instead. So those are my 6 tips. Do you have any questions for me?
I've got one, if no one else does. I'm curious, like, where do you draw your inspiration from for the be creative part, right? Like, I think a lot of us, by the time you get to the end of the report or the dev cycle, your brain is kind of drained, right? Like, you did the DAX, you did the Power Query or whatever it was, and then you're like, okay, now I need to be creative, and you're like blocked. Your brain is in a different place. Like, where do you usually go Are there certain sites or certain activities? Maybe just go outside. I don't know. It could be that simple. I'm just curious where you usually draw that energy from.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So what I normally do is I do all the technical bits of it, and then I stop. I completely stop. And then I said, I'm going to do something else. Like it could be another project, it could be go for a run, it could be, and then the day after, I start with the data visualization part. I do something like start, and then I stop again, and then I do next day, because every time I look at it the next day, I see things that I didn't see before. You get so focused on your own work that you don't see anything. And then you see with a little bit of perspective. So it's like, oh, that was not very pretty, or that's in the wrong place. And when it comes for inspiration, I actually have a Twitter account where I follow only data visualization people and accounts. And then when I see a picture, or I follow, for example, also this Eurostat, which is the European statistical organization, and I follow Statista. I follow a lot of organizations that do very cool charts. And when I see something I like, I save it. I have a folder, which right now is gigantic, with charts that I like, that I thought that, oh, that was so cool. So when I'm doing a project and I said, oh, I'm doing trends, I go to my folder and I look at what other people did on trends that I found good. And then I try to apply it. Obviously, sometimes it depends on the tool, or depends on the audience. You can't do it like that, but you get an idea. And I Google also a lot. For example, if I do something on HR, so I go and I Google HR Power BI reports and HR, especially Tableau. I think the Tableau community is absolutely amazing at data visualization. And there is a Tableau public search site, and you can search there. So I search for HR reports and see what they've done. And then you start to see, like, oh, look how they frame it, or look how they did this bit of analysis. And I do the same, right? So I take a little bit from everything and everybody. And then remember to always ask your audience. They are the most important. Does this make sense to you, what I just did? Is this chart, is it what you were expecting? Does it say something to you? Because at the end, they are the ones that will be on the receiving end. They are the ones that need to be happy. So they should be the ones that, sign off on your project and say, yeah, that was perfect, thank you. Oh, there is a.
I have a.
If I may, just the last thing, because there is a Twitter account. It's actually a company that is called Visual Capitalist, and their visualizations are just amazing. So check that out too. Yeah, sorry.
I'm curious how you think about the interactive components of your reports, because you were talking about answering, not trying to answer too many questions and not trying to cram in too much. But on the other hand, people, well, I need my fiscal year drop down, or I need my slicer for this. And now with the parameterized axes, it's possible to put more and more interactivity. And I'm just curious if you have any tips for how you think about that balance of controls and interactivity with clarity and simplicity.
Yeah. Good question. What I normally do for that is I always think of my dashboards as the forest and the trees. So I always start with a high level view, like this is how we did in the year, and then this is the customers, and this is the, like the basic overview at the top. And then I do drill throughs. So I say, okay, do you want to have year over year? Go drill through on customer, go drill through on this customer or whatever customer, and go to that page that is especially designed for you to know anything that you want about customer, and then you can go back. So I take them back and forth, depending if they want to see high level or they want to go very, very deep. And then they can go very deep on products, and normally have like summary overview of a lot of stuff, and then they have customer, products, markets, business lines, and specific report. So we don't put everything on the same plate. But at the end of the day, for example, I always lose that battle with finance. Finance wants to see everything all the time with all the slicers and all the filters and everything. And if they want it, I give it to them. There's no question. If you need it, if you understand that, if it's useful to you, you have it. So let's not have the discussion. I try to do like, okay, how about a read through and normally it doesn't go well. But with other side of the businesses, they normally are very happy to actually be able to go up and down into the hierarchy to find the insights themselves without actually having everything jumping back at you at once. No more questions?
Ruth, I have a question for you. When you're building one of these solutions, you have a great use of color, and it's always very visually appealing. Is that hard for some of your customers who just want, plain, simple? Like sometimes I have clients that say, just give me Excel, give me a table. And I'm like, no. Like, we're going to make this data beautiful. We're going to make it come alive. So how do you get that across? How do you get people to adopt some of the solutions you build?
Yeah, it's tough. What I normally do for that is that I always give them what they want, and then I always give them what I think they should have, which normally is not the same thing. But you say, okay, this is what you wanted, and this is another way that you might want to see it. Look at that, how pretty it is, looking good. And if it's not finance, it goes always well. But if it is finance, it's just, they have a specific way to do things and to dig into data and filters and stuff, and that's how they work, and that's fine. But give them what you think they should have along with what they ask for, because if you don't give them what they're asking for, they will be unhappy. So you need to give them both. So inspire
That's a great
them
answer. I
and
like
give them
that.
what you have.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Very helpful.
You're welcome. Cool.
I have another question if no one else does, and I've often wondered this because we're data people. We want to deal with reporting and visuals. Like, how do you become inspired, or what inspired you to make a YouTube channel? Like, I've been thinking about trying to make a website course for how to go from not analytics to getting into data, like hey, you could use Excel, you could use a pivot chart, just to get those people from like the business analysis side or project management side over. But I'm really curious, like, how do you make that jump? Where are you to go, you know what, I'm going to make a YouTube channel about this? Like, to me, that's a pretty big difference than I'm going to have an online course where my face isn't shown. I'm curious because I feel like that's a significant larger amount of effort and time. You have to be very inspired, very motivated, very passionate about something that would hit you.
Yeah, definitely. There is actually the reason why I started doing YouTube is, I had a blog on Synology servers. I love Synology, so I have a few servers, and I had a blog where I just, show people how to do stuff. And then I got into Power BI, and I thought, oh, that's so cool. So I did a few blog posts about Power BI, but oh my Lord, it was copy paste images all the time. There's like format page, click here, click there, click there, click there. And at the end, the blog post was like gigantic. It took me hours to make. And then I said, oh, what about if I make a video? Because then I don't have to like copy paste everyone, like click, click, click. Like, even if it sounds harder, it's actually easier for Power BI because you don't have to, copy paste all the menus and all that stuff. So I found it faster to do a video. I was petrified by doing videos because I didn't know much about Power BI, to be perfectly honest. So I was like, I'm going to say something stupid, which I probably did the whole time. But people are kind, if I do something wrong, they just tell me like, oh, maybe, and they tell me in a quite nice way, they say, oh, Ruth, maybe did you know that you can also do it like that? They don't say, oh, you're stupid, why did you do that? So I find data people quite nice. So don't be afraid. If you want to do video, give it a go. It's actually, it takes time, but after a while you get the hang of it. It's not that hard. And it's quicker than to make a blog post, I assure you. There's like a million menus that you have to Photoshop and click and put numbers and bullets and arrows. And I found the process so painful that it was like, no, I'm not doing that. So just go for it, do it.
I have one question here, Ruth, and being on the Power BI side of things for kind of a long time, how do you feel in terms of old school? We used to do end-to-end solution in Power BI, kind of a dashboard in a day, kind of a starting from Power BI desktop until we deploy to the service and all that stuff. Right now, something that I've been facing is at enterprise layer, we are a whole team. Someone is working on the design, someone is working on the Power Query, someone is working in the DAX, and the other team is working on the service and the governance and all the stuff. How do you feel in terms of that kind of integration of multiple teams at this point working on Power BI? How do you feel that this is landing right now?
Yeah, I feel sorry. The team's doing it because there's no versioning in Power BI, so it's a huge pain, gigantic pain, unfortunately. But I hear that they are fixing that they are going to be versioning on GitHub, I think, so it's going to get fixed. So that's good news. But I think that's the main pain point, right? That you have to really coordinate, because you cannot just push your changes somewhere and then it will work. You have to be mindful about what somebody has done. And I think that it's a good thought that you have, because I've been thinking too that Power BI has become more and more an enterprise tool, right? It's gone from the self-service, let's help business users, to this platform that does everything, right? And you have like governance and layers, and you have like all this data stuff, like hardcore IT stuff connected to it. So it's another beast of what we did in 2015 for sure. Is it needed? Definitely for enterprises to have this type of governance. It is needed. So I think it's good that they are doing it. For me, as a Power BI hardcore developer, I love to do the DAX and the Power Query and the data visualization. It takes development effort from the Power BI desktop. So I'm a bit jealous that everything is going to the service, But it is a great platform. I definitely think that it is none of a kind, I would say. They've gone so far in such a little amount of time. It's only been like 7 years, maybe. So they've done quite a lot from, the little versions of Power BI desktop to the data flows and the data marts and the securities and the goals and the metrics and the and the apps and the workspaces. You need like a course on administration. It will take like probably 2 weeks if you want to train somebody properly just on the administration side.
Yeah.
So it's just nuts. But let's hope for GitHub versioning soon, so it will be a lot easier.
Yeah.
So let's see. Thanks for all those questions. Are there any other questions? No, take that as I think we're done here, Ruth. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing some of those tidbits with us. I know I definitely took a few screenshots, and I'll be relying on some of those myself. Thanks to everyone who joined, especially all the new folks. we dropped a few links in chat there, so feel free to jump on the meetup group and, like I said, the YouTube channel with some of the old videos. And then if there's anyone that you know that would appreciate the presentation, we will probably get this up on YouTube within a few days, probably by the end of the week. What do you think, Wes? Something like that. So feel free to forward it along to them as well, and just let us know. Cool. Again, thanks again, everyone. Appreciate it, especially you, Ruth. And then we'll let you all know when we've got our next session lined up.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth.
Such a pleasure. Thank you. And have a good night for me, good day for you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Cool. Bye.
Thank you,
next
everyone.
time.
Thank you.